Hey guys, I'm gonna get him in here. As soon as he pops up in here, we'll get him up there. Says he's offline. There we go. Thank you. Went and got a haircut this morning. There we go. All right, let me get you in here, Dan. Listen, this is super exciting for me, guys. I don't know if you realize this, but Dan Limmer has written so much of what we do um, for EMT classes and such. So, hang on a second. I don't know what the crap the deal is here. Okay, there we go. Got the invite sent to you, Dan. This is super exciting for me. Hey, thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm here. For some reason you can't see me.
Huh.
This is the weirdest thing. It says you'll connect with audio only. Hope it's not my face.
Oh, okay. So you got to turn your camera on, apparently. I sent you an invite to do that.
All right.
Getting the word out. Everybody's sharing the live, which is good. That's what we want.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, for those of you that follow me but maybe don't follow Limmer Education, listen, let me just tell you that Dan Limmer is the guy, okay? Um, we were kind of talking in at work the other day, and I was talking about being able to do this, and one of the things that we were talking about was the book that we used. Like, this dude literally wrote the book, so it's super exciting for me to even be having this conversation. So, super excited about this. Me get him on the moderator list too, so that he can. Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of people have. Uh-oh. Where'd he go? Okay, let's try this again.
All right. It's still not letting me get on here. There's no button I can click for camera or anything. We own a tech
Huh.
company that does apps. I hate when this happens. It's just Murphy's Law or something here, Redbeard.
Well, you know what they say. If it can go wrong, it
Oh,
will.
here we go. Turn on
That's just,
camera. There you go. You invited me to turn on my camera.
yes, I did.
There we are.
Ah,
Oh,
there we
finally,
go.
finally. We have so much to talk about.
Absolutely. I'm gonna. So this is you. This is you reached out to me, so I want you to kind of guide where we go with this. So you have infinitely more experience with this than I do. So
Well, maybe not with TikTok, but we'll put that aside for now. The reason I did this is because I like your message. So much of social media, if you read the comments, is filled with trolls and snipers and people with bad attitudes about the business.
oh,
And I like the fact that there's a voice out there that is even keel and supportive and doing that. The fire service announced a stand down in the middle of June for mental health, right? But we're eating our young in EMS. If you look at any of the posts, I follow a lot of people who put a comment up on social media somewhere and saying, I failed the National Registry. I don't know what to do. And people are saying, well, if you failed so many times, you shouldn't be an EMT anyway. Yeah, I mean the stuff is just so bad out there. So I think for me, what I really wanted to do was continue the thing that the message we both believe. We obviously have a little bit more experience now. Your beard is red, mine is a little older color here, but we have a certain amount of experience here, and I just think that it's important to put that good message out there.
I absolutely agree with you. The whole goal for me with starting this TikTok thing, and I've only been doing this since December. The goal is always to be the advocate for EMS that I wish that I had whenever I was coming up. It was a different time back then, though. I think that we've done a really good job of, trying to get past the old way of doing things. But the problem is that we still got those holdovers that, make people feel like trash because maybe they don't get something or something like that. You know what I mean? And we can't do that anymore. Like we're running people off.
We are, and people say we can't recruit people. I would say, to a certain extent, we can't retain them. Right? Retaining somebody is the problem when you have organizations or getting people even in a class. How to keep people in a class and keep them motivated. The EMS is still relatively new if you compare it to medicine or nursing or anything else. We're still pretty new. So I'm looking at some of the comments here coming through. Well, thank you for the kind words about the Limmer apps. We really do try and do that well. We want it to be a good experience. Somebody earlier said, when we were trying to get together the first time, that they thought some of our exams were harder than the registry. And we do that on purpose, right? If everybody comes out of the National Registry and says, oh, I don't think I passed, it was horrible. Well, let's have that experience first. And then it won't be so bad, right? All
I
right.
absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. So what's your message? What if you had a new person hop on your truck, brand new person, or maybe a student that came in? What's your go-to message that you say to them? What's the
Uh oh. Booted him off again. Technical difficulties, friends. Technical difficulties. I'll get you back in here. Like he just straight booted him off. I don't know what happened.
I'm in a hotel in Anaheim, California, and I'm wondering if it's the hotel internet that's
It
maybe
could
not
be.
maybe not liking this. We'll try it one more time. I don't think we should make people wait and do this. And I just asked you a great question too, right? Right up your alley about that.
Yes. So to answer your question, with whenever I get new people that come in, either orientees or students, the first thing that I tell them is, listen, I want to be the guy that's going to help you get through whatever you need. If there's something that you need that you're not understanding, ask. If I ask you to do something that you're not comfortable with, ask. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. I want you to operate at the intended scope that you're going to be, whether you are an EMT or an EMT student or a paramedic or a paramedic student. I want you to be able to operate at that scope. And I don't want you to be afraid to ask me questions. I'm not going to belittle you. I'm not going to treat you like crap. I am here to help you. And as long as you're asking questions, then I know that you're putting forth the effort. As long as you're putting forth the effort, I will pour 100% of myself into you. Um, and the big thing for me is not to be afraid to make mistakes. Like when we're new, that's going to happen. And if I'm constructively criticizing you, emphasis on constructive, I'm not criticizing you. I'm trying to help you get better. And, if for some reason there is something that I'm doing or saying that offends them, then I want them to tell me that because I don't know how to fix it if I don't know. So that's the general idea that I give every student that comes my way, every orientee that comes my way, and it's been great. Always positive feedback. So
The it's a gift to be able to let someone go, a new person go, at their own pace, a slow pace, even though you know you could do this 10 times faster, have everything done, and then be coasting on the way to the hospital. And we're sitting there waiting for people to do it so much slower. I was very fortunate to have people who did that for me. A long time ago, I dedicated a first responder book to 4 people that I think, if you're here and you've got longevity like we do, or relatively well adjusted, we're doing this on the shoulders of some people that helped us along. And I think people really, they go in that ambulance and they feel like they're on the tightrope and there's no net. We're the net. We're the people that are going to be the safety thing. We'll stop them if things start to go bad. We'll let them go at their own pace because we've been there and we've done it. And I think that that's a gift. As a police officer when I was young, I had some FTOs that let me do stuff and made me feel like I was doing it right. I remember the day that a person on the ambulance said, "All right, Dan, you're almost done with the EMT class. I want you to run this call. I'm going to be here, but if it's an ALS call, I'll have to obviously jump in. But I want you to do this." That was just, all right, that was 40 something years ago. All right. I can still show you that house. It meant so much to me. I can tell you exactly where that call was. And that is the kind of thing I think we're talking about here, in that that's the safety net. That's the thing we do. And people that don't do that don't realize the joy that comes from it, the satisfaction that we get. What happens when you've done your 3rd nursing home transfer of the shift, or you've got your general body weakness, or, can't pay a taxi person, right? Frequent flyer. Where does this joy come from? I always tell people EMS will never make you happy. You need to be happy in EMS. And people really think that it's going to be some magical thing that comes along. And I think that when we're out there, we might even find someone who's getting somewhat disillusioned, even if they've been there a while, and experienced people can help there too. The last thing I'll say is I got kicked off, but the fire service, I don't think I finished this, I was having a stand down for mental health. And they're saying, from the 15th to the 21st of June, it's time to focus on mental health, how we take care of ourselves, how we take care of each other. And I think that's really a great idea. Our social media feeds are filled with grieving people left behind by suicide.
Absolutely.
We need to take care of each other.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing that we've gotten a lot better at over the last, say, 15, 20 years is, being able to talk about those things. Because, when I was coming up 20 years ago, it was, something you didn't really talk about. You didn't talk about mental health. You didn't talk about, how people made you feel, especially in the negative sense, because when you did that, like you were a pariah, nobody wanted to deal with you anymore. Nobody wanted to talk with you anymore.
Right.
And I think that we've gotten a lot better about addressing these things, because it sucks that so many people had to die for that to happen. But unfortunately, how do things change? They change when things happen. And so, I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful that we have the opportunity to pour into people and to show them that, this job is what you make it. You can choose to go to work miserable every day. You can choose to go to work and just not care. And I think we see that a lot with people being disillusioned. And, we're finally getting to a point where we're recognizing this, and we're trying to weed out the people that are still the problem. It's a work in progress. It's going to take time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt. And there's a lot of comments coming through here, about support. We have a 7 Things EMS podcast, and the 7 things I've got my youngest daughter is an EMT, and I took her to New Orleans to ride with New Orleans EMS. And while I was there, they for their people. And interestingly, her office used to be upstairs with administration and nobody would come up, right? They moved her downstairs near where people come in and out and where they do their briefings and things, and people can go in her office. I mean, they've got their own social worker there. And what a great thing that is. It eliminates the whole stigma. We're bringing it right in-house, right? If 10% of the people out there have depression, some level of depression, and are taking an SSRI or something else, right? So that means if you're looking around on a shift or within people coming and going in your agency, think about that number. And you probably don't know about it, but they're no less a provider because they're dealing with the things that are there, and there should not be a stigma, and we should support people. You know, I'll routinely call people. We had a horrible bloody cancer right through a vessel, lung cancer, and it was a horrible bloody death. And I called everybody that was there just to check on them. You know, it's like, let's just check on it. It's what we do. And I get joy from that. I get to feel like I'm doing something, right? I've been in EMS a long time, and I've done a lot of things, do things. Now I'm there so new people can get all the skills, you know, and that's part of, you know, my job is being around for a while, and you have adopted as yours. So, you know, I think it's really good stuff. Giving people a safety net physically and emotionally will help keep people in the game.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think it'll help with the, you know, career longevity of people as well. You know, as opposed to, I mean, right now, the average career expectancy for a paramedic is only 5 years, and it may be even less than that now. It was 5 years, 10 years ago, whenever I was going through. Um, and, you know, it's because people become disillusioned. I mean, really, it does, because they expect something. They have an expectation that is not being met, and it's up to us to figure out what that expectation is and how we get to that point. And I don't think sometimes we ask the right questions. I think sometimes we just kind of let people slip, you know, for all intents and purposes, slip through the cracks. And as educators and preceptors and, you know, providers ourselves, um, you know, we have to be mindful of that, and we have to try to, um, you know, get people comfortable, and not necessarily comfortable, but, you know, to where they feel like they're a part of the team and they're contributing. How do we do that? I mean, we encourage.
We do. I think this, and you know, it's funny. I'm watching some of the comments here. It's really interesting. People said, I went to a therapist and they said, you know, get a different job. You know, another person said, you know, I don't have times, pandemic medic, you don't always have time to hold someone's hand and do things. And I think you've got to find moments, right? You know, with patients and with partners and people that you work with, you've got to find the moments. You have to make them. You know, the pace of EMS. You know, you go into the ER and they're calling you. We got calls holding, right? Yeah, I mean, you got to do things fast, but meaning can be done in a lot of different ways. And yeah, I know it really can be really discouraging about that. And there's other people going through saying, you know, my state or my region is really good. We have, you know, support groups here. And I think that is really, really awesome too. Some of the comments, I mean, we have a lot of people really active, which is awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Pandemic Medic had a question, and I'd like to get your take on it. I have
Okay.
thoughts of my own, but I would like to get your thought on it. So the question is, if there are entry-level EMTs and medics that don't have that drive or are very timid of the job, even after multiple efforts to help them be more confident, should they still remain on the job? That was the question that Pandemic Medic asked.
The word there is confident. And there are people out there that sit around and pray that the tones don't go off because they're not sure they're going to be able to do it. And that's ultimately, imagine having to live like that, right? And that ultimately is confidence, right? I mean, if people aren't confident, they're not going to thrive. So that's the word that I picked out of that. So I think the thing is to help them be more confident. And then we have to figure out what's making them not be confident. Some people are more shy and introverted, take more work like that. Some people clinically, I had a long time ago, I was driving this when somebody else was teching. Old person had a pulse of like 38, right? An old patient was 80s. And I said, I'll set up a bag for you. We'll get moving quickly. He says, I think I'm going to take this in BLS. I'm like, okay, you think this 86-year-old woman is a long distance runner is why her pulse is so low? And I said to myself, what a slug. This person doesn't want to do anything. And it hit me years later. He didn't want to start that line because he'd have to think about giving a med or think about pacing. And people that aren't confident don't make entry level decisions because they don't feel they can handle it when it goes down the line. So I think to a certain extent, you have to, a pandemic medic, is you got to figure out how to push them, how to get them out of their comfort zone, to get a little bit of experience and say, oh yeah, maybe I can do this. Be that safety net, right? To let them feel like they can do it safely. Now, will everybody thrive in EMS and stay? No, right? I think we have to say some people might not be cut out for it, but I am adamantly against any one person or a small group of people making that decision for someone because it can be so subjective. It can be popularity based. It can be a mentality of things that's not there. How many people do we lose? That'd be good. There's a guy named Bruce, years ago in New York, was a volunteer. And there was a pedestrian accident. And he was out there and I knew he was pretty new as an EMT. He had a driver. So I pulled up, I'm the medic. He goes, Dan, I'm glad you're here. You got to put a traction splint on. And I'm like, okay, I don't have to put a traction splint on. You have to put a traction splint on. I'll do the track. I'll hold some stabilization and traction. And he looked at me with that, you son of a, yeah, but you're right. Because I pushed him. Because he ended up leaving because he never fully engaged. And I look at that as a loss because he liked it and did it. And how many people would say, get out of the way, kid, let me do that. So I really think that, will everybody be in EMS? No. Is everybody going to be cut out for, the knife and gun club and do that? Maybe not. But I think we do lose a lot of good people because they never get confident. And that there's confidence, which is built on competence. And people think that confidence is knowing everything. And it's not. It's knowing you don't know everything and saying, okay, I think I can figure this out, or I can call for help. That's ultimately what confidence is. If you're confident without the right to be, that's cockiness. And we all start a little bit that way, right? But yeah, no. All right, so I got to stop. This is why I thought this would be fun, because we have very similar approaches to things. And confidence. If you can help somebody build confidence, get them so they feel like in their skin they can be on that truck and not know everything but figure it out, then I think pandemic medic, you've won.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. I have actually a really good example from my own service area. So we had this. He's a very, very green EMT, and he came to us fresh out of EMT school. His dad is actually a paramedic that works with us as well. He works on the part-time side, and this kid is, he wants to do it, and you can tell, but he's very, very timid. And everybody at the service was like, no, get rid of him. He's not cut out for it. He's not cut out for it. And finally somebody said, and this is literally how the conversation went. They came to me and they were like, do you think that him being with you would help him at all? I was like, I can't really answer that question. All I can tell you is that I will give every bit of effort that I can to, helping his confidence and to help him be a good provider, because that was there it is. He was lacking the confidence because he didn't know everything, and people would just cast him to the side and be like, okay, let me do that. Let me do that. And so I was finally, I told him one day, I was like, listen, as far as I'm concerned, at the moment, it's all you. If I need to step in and do, I'll do the ALS stuff, but I want you to assess patients. I want you to get competent in your skill set. while I'm doing mine. And he was like, that's really great. Nobody's really taking the time to do that. And I worked with him. I think they gave me like 2 months with him. So I was his only FTO, his only preceptor, and he's thriving now. Runs a truck. He can run a BLS truck on his own now. And, so pandemic, back to your point, I do believe that at some point, if you're not getting through to them, then maybe it's time for somebody else to, if they can, to step up and be like, okay, well, I'm going to precept this guy. And then if that doesn't work, then you have to have a serious conversation. Is this working out? Why is this not working out? Is it just a confidence thing, or is it just that, you're just not getting it? And sometimes you do have to cut your losses and move on. Nobody's saying you don't, pandemic. It's just the student and the new guy, the new gal, deserve a chance. And we have to give them that opportunity. We have to give them that opportunity to grow.
And that helps us grow. That's how we continue to grow with a certain amount of experience. How do you go on? How do you improve your practice? How do you find fulfillment? And I think it really works there as well. And there's people here are saying, I worked with people and give me PTSD, but with somebody, their partner left, and they got somebody else, and then they did okay. So I think that I think people just need to be able to come in and feel it. So where is the point of no return?
That's a tough question. I think that is pandemic. I think, that is something that is case by case. It's dependent on the case. Maybe it is that you're not getting through to them, and then if nobody else can get through to them, maybe that's the point of no return. Or maybe they've done something that, is a detriment, and maybe that's the point of no return. It really depends on the person and the situation, like what Martin just said. So,
yeah, no, very, very much so. And I think that trying a different person, you're right. So you're not just, here's your FTO. Having formal FTO training, a lot of times we're putting people out there, people have no experience, in doing that. Some are naturals, others really don't want to be training anybody. And I think that's part of it. But, really, if you have an organization that's on the ball and an FTO program, if someone isn't performing well, they need to be told about that. They need to have criteria or guidelines they're going to meet, objectives, right? I want you to, do you ever have someone that came on the truck and, they can always sink the IV or sink the tube, but they don't talk to people. So I think we need to set goals as we train people and say, okay, I need you to now be, or people that aren't assertive, right? How do we say, all right, I want you to be more assertive, and here's what that looks like, and here's how to do it. And if we set goals, we set, things that milestones, things you need to do, and someone doesn't meet those, then it becomes more of an objective process. Subjectivity, I don't think they're cut out for EMS. We're both against, because it's very subjective. So I think ultimately we need to do that. Someone said, I said I'm in Anaheim. They said Disney. No, this is actually the Committee on Accreditation of EMS Programs, a CreditCon conference I'm out here for. And I'm actually teaching on, you might find this surprising, item writing and item analysis for test items. So I'm doing some teaching, and we have a booth out here. So no Disney.
I have to step away from the camera for just a second. The dog just came downstairs, and I got to go get him corralled. I'll be right back.
All right. I'm going to, some came through. I want to talk about generations. I'm going to start talking about generations, and we'll take care of it. I got you. It's funny. I'm most likely an older generation than a lot of people that are watching this. And it's very easy for any generation to say, this new generation, it's that get off of my lawn kind of thing. And I really think that every generation is going to be different. I remember my grandparents talking about the hippies, and then there's this and this and this, everything's about social media with this generation. I think, first of all, you have to be careful about other generations, because when they're not your generation, you might not understand. And the generations are going to be what they are. And we're going to have judgments, personal thoughts about those generations. There really shouldn't be judgments. And I think we have to work with those things. I think we have to maintain our standards for patient care and doing those things, right? We can't have, phones and people taking pictures or, on social media while we're with patients and doing things. But I think we have to let people be who they are while they do it as well. I think that's really important. Yeah. If it's common sense, boy, if I could, Limmer Education sells apps, but boy, if we could sell common sense, we'd be rich, right? And some people just weren't around when that came out. And that common sense might be people wise, or it might be clinical judgment. You get some people that can look at a patient, look them up and down, size them up, say skin color's bad, look at they got their hand, we got to get out before this person codes, right? Other people don't see those same things. Intuition is very, very challenging in this. Yeah, and people are coming in, they're really young. I'm not going to be that get off of my lawn guy. I'm going to be the person that wants to welcome people in. I think that's just really, really, really important to be able to do that, So yeah, I think that's really important. People would refuse to buy it. Well, there's something to be said for that, I guess. People might actually do that. So what else should we talk about? What else are we doing? Redbeard and I, we have similar thoughts. Photographing scenes. That's a big thing. Upstate New York. So going back to my roots, about 10 years ago, I got a wild hair to do a photo book, like a coffee table book of EMS. There's all kinds of every firefighter's got a, GoPro and a camera someplace. And there's books about cops out there, but there was no photo documentary, or very limited photo documentary of EMS. The old Denver General stuff was really good. So I started riding around the country taking photographs because I wanted to tell the story of EMS. And I have actually 50 or 60 photographs pulled out. And what's interesting is that it's now a history book, right? Because things that were done then, mobilizing people to backboards, doing things like that. I think we have to be really, really careful photographing scenes. I got permission from patients and did that. But I do think it'd be fun to tell the story of EMS, All right, so I covered a lot of stuff while we were gone. We talked about a little bit about generations. I said how we can't judge other generations. I don't want to be the old guy that says, get off of my lawn, that we have to do that. But we talked about phones. People talked about photographing and doing other things, and we have to be really careful now with social media and being live and doing that. People have been fired and some have been arrested for some of the things they've done with social media and that. And I think we have to be really, really careful what we say on social media. If you go to a new job, they're going to look at your social media. They're going to do stuff. I think you have to be careful. How's your dog?
Oh, he's good. He's good. He's just being needy this morning. So he stays upstairs with my daughter, with my youngest, and so whenever he comes down and Dad's been at work for 24 hours, he has to come see Dad. So that was kind of what you saw there. So I had to let him outside real quick.
So you're his therapy human.
Yeah, pretty much. Until Mom gets home. And then when Mom gets home, it's all about Mom.
Oh, we just had a comment about pay. That's a tough one, isn't it?
It is. EMS on the low side of pay. Well, it's because we're new. We're still trying to figure. So, and I say this a lot, and people don't like it, but it's the truth. We're still trying to figure out who we are. Are we a transport entity, or are we a healthcare entity, or are we somewhere in the middle? We don't know. We're trying to figure out, for all intents and purposes, we're trying to figure out who our daddy is.
Public safety, or healthcare, is another way to say that, right? Public safety, fire department model, right? Don't want degrees, get people out there, get them on the trucks and the engines. get people trained. They want it done. Healthcare values degrees. Now, I am envious of firefighters in the way they stick together. The IAFF, IAFC, if EMS had that, I think we'd be different. We're too busy fighting each other, right? Everyone does better when there's a common enemy, right? But we're still fighting each other and trying to figure out where that comes from. And the fact that we came from a volunteer setting and still have volunteers, and I've been a volunteer, a lot of my life, New York was big on that, where I came from. And, there's not a lot of volunteer in other parts of healthcare. So we've relatively new from the 70s, the white paper in the 60s. And I don't think I'm going to see it, but I'd like to think that we'll get together and be able to figure out our place and do that.
I would like to believe so too. Kentuckiana Safety Solutions brought up a good point. Discussing pay as an excuse not to hold ourselves to a higher standard. There is a lot of truth to that. You see providers all the time that, I don't make enough for this. I don't make enough for this. They don't pay me enough to do that. That's above my pay grade. Which is a cop-out. It's a cop-out to, allow yourself to do less and feel good about it. And I don't like that. I've never been one to, and you see it all the time. So, I don't know how much you've seen of what I've posted, but a lot of what I post and a lot of what I talk about in my lives is how we treat people that we don't perceive as being worthy of our time and attention. The frequent flyer, addicts especially. I am working on, so I'm trying to get into like conference speaking, and a couple of the things that I'm doing actually pertain to how we treat, addicted persons and how we manage their complaints. And I think that there's some value to that. And I also think that that comes down to, people saying, oh, well, they don't pay me enough to care. Yes, they do. You are literally in a job where you are to care for people. I suggest that everybody reads the book People Care by Tom Dick. It is a fantastic book, and it should be read. I mean, that should be required reading, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's you talk about speaking at conferences. Very first conference I ever spoke at, Binghamton, New York. The headliner was Tom Dick. And I sat next to him at dinner. They had the speaker dinner, and I sat next to him, and I felt like I was sitting next to royalty. And me being, young paramedic, and I was doing a little bit of book stuff at the time, not a ton. And he treated me so well and so honorably, right? When you don't have to. Mm-hmm. I sat next to Jim Page at a dinner, and it was a really nice restaurant. I don't know how I got so lucky to sit next to, James O. Page, right? From GEMS. And if you don't know, he was a battalion chief in LA, involved in the emergency television show, started GEMS magazine, attorney, brilliant man. And I was a young guy sitting here, and I was, again, sitting next to royalty. And they're saying, well, do you want red wine or white wine? And I'm like, I don't really drink wine. I said, can I do a Budweiser? And Jim Page whispers to the waiter. The waiter gave everybody else their wine. Then he came over to me, and he held up the bottle of Budweiser with a towel over his arm, took the top off, poured a little bit so I could sample it like it was wine, and then filled my glass. And Jim Page set that up for me because I was drinking a Budweiser. He said to the waiter, hey, listen, let's make this fun. And I just felt so included that someone like Jim Page would take the time to do something nice for me. It was done very nicely. And Tom Dick, Jim, I've had very fortunate to have experiences sitting next to Bruno at a dinner one time where these people we look at them as royalty in EMS, but just like you said, they treated me so well when they didn't have to.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
I think that with that being said, it is also up to us to treat our patients the same way. Like, they're not going to remember that that you intubated them, that that you shocked them back to life, whatever. They're going to remember how you treated them. They're going to remember that you took the time to be kind to them.
Yep.
And the addicts are especially that way too. I can't tell you how many times that I've been to a patient that is an addicted person, and I tell them, like, hey, I'm here for you. If you need to talk, let's talk. Like, I'm here to take care of you. Like, I don't care what so and so says about you. Like, let's talk about you. And they remember that, and they're so thankful for that. They're like, man, that last guy that came over here, well, he was kind of a, you know what? And you're so nice. Why is it so different? It drives me insane. So I'm going to start submitting that presentation to conferences. And another one that I'm working on is FTOing the FTO. When to know that somebody shouldn't be an FTO. So,
it's and doing that. The one thing else I'm gonna now I'm talking to you as much as the viewers. Two things. One is recognize that those aren't always the glamorous topics that conferences want, unfortunately. And the other thing I'll say is always put in a clinical topic or two, because it's like once you play a villain in the movies, you're always going to play the villain. Do the stuff that you like, but then do a clinical topic or two. That way it kind of gets you in there. So when you put it out, they're like, okay, we can do some of the clinical glitzy stuff, and then we'll do this one. But I 100% agree with, if you're going to speak at a conference, for anybody who wants to speak at a conference, the best thing that you can do is only speak about things you're passionate about. Right? If someone calls me and says, hey, Dan, can you do a talk on hazmat, or can you do a talk on pediatric congenital heart malformations? I say no, because that's not my thing. And I'm going to speak about what I'm passionate about. Right? It's just, and I think that's my thing. I remember, going out to conferences a long time, and someone said that to me. Don't just do, safety and survival and other stuff, which is what I was doing mostly. Do some clinical stuff too, or else you get labeled as that person.
That's fair. I've got some things that I could probably work with. Critical care is kind of in my wheelhouse. I'm studying for the flight paramedic test now. I actually take a test for air methods tomorrow. So critical care is kind of like, I love that stuff. It's so entertaining. But like Scarbosa criteria, that's another one that I really love. And I actually posted a video about that not long ago. That thing's got like 30,000 views. It's crazy.
It's big stuff. We've come a long way in 12 leads, and we have a lot of responsibility in using those 12 leads appropriately. Everything from putting them on properly, which is a horrible problem. Do you ever see how some people put on the 12 leads? Holy cow.
Oh, yes.
From putting them on right to the interpretation, and it's our reputation. I'm gonna take that reputation, the 12 lead, the Scarbosa, and go back one step. And I'm going to bring up the D word, degrees. And, no one is going to stand up for EMS until we stand up for ourselves. Right? And I think that's an important message. And there's a lot of people that say, well, I'm not going to get a degree. It doesn't get me more money or do this or that. And I do think we have to elevate ourselves and elevate the profession to be able to get somewhere. And we're a relatively short attention span crowd. And no, we're not getting paid a lot as far as that. So why would I spend the money to do this? And I think you're spending the money for your future when your back goes, or you want to teach, or maybe for the future of the next people that come along. I do think that degrees have a place, but I also do recognize that it takes money and it takes time, and you need to be on the truck to make money. The reason I passed yesterday. Yay! Congratulations, Cameron.
That is one of the things that I absolutely love. Is so in the lives that I do, we get a lot of students. We get a lot of people that are preparing for the National Registry, and they always come back and tell me whether they passed or if they need some work, and then we try to get through that together. I always point them to you too, especially when hello. Yeah, yeah, he's my TikTok star. He's my buddy.
Well, I'm
I
going to
always point
say
them to YouTube.
you're going to get more views from him than you are from me.
Uh, he definitely gets a lot of views, that's for sure. All right, bud, go on. Go on.
That's awesome.
Oh,
That's awesome.
go on. Go on. I'm almost done. Go. Go. I'll be right back.
Sure. I agree. The dog there, man, just show me a dog. Dog videos get more likes than me. I know.
Go to bed.
The puppy. Yeah, the puppy's getting a lot of attention here in the comments.
Oh yeah, they love Cooper.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a dog person.
Yeah, me too. We have a cat too, but she's not my friend. She yeah, she does not like me.
Can we still get your book with pictures? Oh, I wish. I guess I maybe didn't finish that. Pearson was going to publish it. They were going to get it on the press for me. And then they changed their mind. They got sold or something happened. And then once I didn't have a publisher, I wasn't going to publish it myself. So I've got the photos, and I should really start it up again because I love doing photography. That's, everybody in the business has something else they do, don't they? I mean, when they're not working, they're doing something else. And that's good. Oh, here's a really good one. Being an EMT more than 2 years is frowned upon. Do people, go jumping to medic? Yeah, that's, when do you go on to medic? That's a really interesting thing.
Absolutely. I always tell people 2.5, 3 years. Gives you, especially if you're in a super busy service, maybe a year. If you even want to be a medic, nothing says you have to be a paramedic. If you are content being an EMT, I have seen lifelong EMTs that are fantastic. Some of them that I would trust more than I would trust any paramedic out there. So,
And stop when you introduce yourself. Stop saying I'm just an EMT, but stop saying that because the word "just" doesn't belong with EMT.
yes, it doesn't belong with anything. You're not just in anything. You could be a fry cook at McDonald's, and you're doing something to contribute to society. So, like, why are we so quick to judge people? Like, you're not just in anything. You are, especially as an EMT, you are a valuable member of my team. I can't do what I do without you.
Yep.
And I want to make you feel that way. Uh, that's a consistent thing in my lives too. I know I'm just an EMT, but no, stop that right now. Let's not say that.
Right. No, totally. As far as the question on when to go to paramedic, and I've been teaching EMTs and AMTs and paramedics for a long time. I don't care if you go from EMT and you go right into paramedic. I would like you to work while you do it. You'll be out there and do it. But I got to tell you, I would take an intrinsically motivated student fresh out of EMT or AEMT class into my paramedic class before I take somebody who's being made to be there by their department. Right. And not that they can't thrive. They've got to do it to keep their job. They certainly are motivated. But if I got somebody that right here in their heart, they said, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, I'll take them in the class, and we really don't have a lot of research. There's one paper out there. I want to say it was Michael Caduce, said that there was actually a time like a year up to, and I don't want to misquote this, up to, let's say 10 years. And that, that there's a sweet spot in the middle. A long, long time don't seem to do as well. Maybe no time as an EMT don't do well. But when we define that, we're not just talking about passing the national registry. Are they going to be a good provider? And we often don't have the metrics. We don't really know what that is. I'll have to look up that paper. I think it was a poster presentation in Orlando at EMS World. But I haven't seen a lot of research out in that. What makes a good candidate coming into paramedic class? And quite frankly, we don't know.
I
right?
think that your motivation says it all. If you are doing it just because somebody told you have to, you're probably not going to be as inclined to be as all in as you would be if you were like, say, whenever I started in EMS, I came from the fire service. I went what most people would consider backwards. I started off as a career firefighter, and then I got on an ambulance, and I found that I really love this side of it. This is what I do, and this is what I'm called to do. I know that there is no doubt in my mind. It's like my wife and I kind of go back and forth sometimes. She's actually on here. You'll see her pop up in the comments from time to time. Um,
Well, that's the married to.
that'd be her.
I thought
Uh,
that was just a really good fan.
yeah, yeah, yep. That's my wife. She's watching from work today. She knows how excited I was about this. But we used to go back and forth about nursing school and nurse practitioner school, and I was like, why I'm not a nurse, because I don't want to be. I'm content on an ambulance or hopefully on a helicopter. This is where I'm happy. And I hope that as time goes on, we get more people that feel the same way.
I always say that I'm more of a drops per minute than a gallons per minute kind of guy. And I always have been. And I'm the drops rather than the gallons. That's how many drops per minute versus the 2.5 or whatever, coming off the engine. I gravitated that way myself. I love a clinical challenge. Even as far as calls, I will take a challenging nursing home call before I would take a trauma call as far as something to be excited about. Give me a list of problems and meds that starts here and then hits the floor and keeps rolling, right? That I've got to sort out. And I'm happy. I love differential diagnosis. I love clinical and critical thinking. And not that trauma doesn't do that, but I love the thinking part. And I'm getting more and more and more into teaching the thinking part.
Absolutely. I think that in a lot of ways, and there are a lot of agencies that don't allow their paramedics to critically think because, they have this set of protocols and it has to be this way. Like, you hit these check boxes, and I call those people, I say this all the time and people get a laugh out of it, but it's the truth. I call them protocol monkeys because realistically speaking, I can teach a monkey how to follow a protocol. What I can't do is teach it how to recognize signs and symptoms that are changing. It's an ever evolving thing. If you're doing an intervention and you have no idea why, but that's what it says to do, then you're one of those protocol monkeys, in my opinion. And we have to do a better job of allowing people to critically think and teaching them how to do that. Like, how do we get from one differential diagnosis to another? And I've always said that whenever we start this, like when you first get on scene, based on the dispatch information and what you hear, you start with a wide set of differentials and you narrow it down as you assess and reassess. And I think that we need so much to, get these people to a point to where they can critically think and be like, okay, well, maybe that's what the protocol says, but maybe that's not accurate. And maybe something else is going on and we need to, kind of move directions here and call medical control and be like, listen, this is what the protocol says. This is why I don't feel like this is right. What say you? So.
No, I encourage people to look at references outside of EMS. I was talking yesterday, MD Calc. I'll go into MD Calc and look at, San Francisco syncope score or something else, because I like to look at what physicians look at and see what's important. Now, I may not have all the tools there, but if they say, okay, if there's a cardiac issue, it's more serious. If they have frequent syncope, right? They have vasovagal syncope is common, and how they rate things. And I think that another source, Tintinelli's emergency medicine textbook, very early in the book, one of the authors said 90% of emergency medicine is in the cognitive domain up here. We would get very heavy on the skills, right? New paramedics are like Cooper, right? The dog, right? He's got, ooh, let's get excited. What can I pull out of this box and stick into this patient, right? But when we make errors, most of the time, they're cognitive errors.
Mhm.
We blow the differential diagnosis and choose the wrong protocol more than we reach into the box and pull out the wrong drug or give too many little lines. Now, there are a couple of recent things where people have been arrested. The whole sedation thing and those meds, that's medication under pressure, something totally different. Most of the time when we make mistakes, we do it, or it's a thought mistake. It's not an action mistake. And that's where the critical thinking comes in. If you don't choose the right protocol, it's not going to work. And I really think that's where the critical thinking comes in that regard, because it ultimately is about the thinking and decision making to get to the right protocol.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So I think that's really what people need to do. And let's go back to EMTs. EMTs have got a big toolbox. In the upcoming new edition for my EMT book, in the pharmacology chapter, we dropped the word assisting with medications for EMTs. The only one that really is an assisted medication is nitroglycerin. But we added ibuprofen, acetaminophen, Zofran, diphenhydramine. It's time for, I went out, surveyed people on what EMTs are carrying on trucks. And the toolbox is getting bigger and bigger. So then you add naloxone and glucose, right? And then a good stroke scale for altered mental status. You need the thinking to go with an increasing toolbox. We are all about the tools, but the tools aren't any good unless there's thinking to go with it. And we had a tough time in this country with EMTB from 94 to 2009. It's like we took the wind out of our sails and the EMTs. Even the word basic was horrible psychology. And that's where, I'm just a basic. Basic isn't even a term anymore. It's not. Some states just never let it go, but it's EMT now. It's not basic. Cooper agrees. Cooper agrees with me. But we're, as the toolbox gets bigger, we have to be able to make the thinking match the potential for the toolbox. I agree. See, Cooper's right on. He's totally with. Yeah.
You are being a pain today. But yeah, I'm right there with you with the I have never thought that EMT basic should be a thing. Even whenever I was an EMT, I didn't think that, because there's nothing really basic about what you're doing. You are still an active part of patient care. You are still assessing patients. You are still alongside a paramedic if you're on an ALS rig. You are still seeing the same patient that they're seeing, and there is a lot of things that you see that I don't see. And I tell my partner that all the time. There is, there are times when she'll be like, okay, well, you're walking down this path, but check this out. I just saw this. Maybe we should shift over here. And she's really good about that, despite the fact that she's new. And I always tell people, you know how I know she's a good EMT? Because I trained her. I love it because she's fantastic at what she does. She anticipates my every move before I even do it. I don't ever have to have a conversation with her. She just knows. And that's,
good medic listens to that. When someone tries to tell you something that you're going down the wrong road, a confident medic listens to that, pays attention.
Absolutely, or they should. If they don't, then I would argue that it's probably just their own ego and arrogance, and that's unfortunate because, as far as I'm concerned, and so for you paramedics that are big shots that are listening, check your ego at the door. We don't need it.
Admitting you don't know something is okay. It's really okay. It's necessary to keep from getting into trouble. Did you ever have a patient? I had a patient crash in one time, and you go there and you say, and somebody was setting up the monitor or whatever, and I was like, hey, I'm Dan, I'm a paramedic, and I feel her pulse. Yeah, bump. And I said, is the monitor on? Yes, spin it around. And I'm like, okay. And they say, what does it say? I said, I don't know, but it's a high degree of AV block, and we've got to, start thinking. It's okay for me not to know exactly which degree it is at that moment, but I'm assembling that first part of of the call. And I remember that call saying, okay, based on that information, we act because we can do what we need to do now. It's like, now I looked at the crew and really young, talented people. I said, all right, so here's the question. Are we going to work this now, or do we think we're going to be okay to get down to the truck? I looked, I think we can get to the truck, right? And those foundational decisions ultimately come from experience and security, right? And we work together as a team to do it. I asked them, and I would do it again. I want your opinion.
Yes.
It's important.
We are a team. We are a team, and it's important that we make them, we make everybody feel like that. Whether that's the firefighters that are there to help you, or the first responders that are there, or even nursing facility staff, right? Like this whole thing on TikTok with the long-term care nurses and the EMS providers. While I have engaged in some of those conversations, I've decided that I'm just not going to entertain those anymore, because we're on the same team, and it's time that we do that. So, BS lifting service. I am recording this. I'm going to try to post this to YT. I don't want to say that because TikTok gets finicky about that, but I am going to try to post this conversation so that people can see it, because I think that it's beneficial to everybody. And so this is why I was so excited to be speaking with the Dan Limmer. Like, I'm totally fanboying over here. I'm just doing a good job of controlling it.
I am just such a goober all in all, and getting to work with you and Cooper now is even a benefit now. Cooper's getting a lot of press here. I'm looking at people commenting on Cooper, and even EMTC for Cooper. He's got some status already.
Oh yeah, I love that. Love that. He's a good boy. He is. Pandemic, right. Go to the corner. Go lay down. Old Stark Lucas. He says that because I work in a very rural area. Now, when I say a rural area, I mean it's an hour and a half to the closest level 1 trauma center, and wow. We are an hour to the closest PCI capable facility. And so whether or not you have critical care certification, you're a critical care paramedic whether you want to be or not. And so, that's why he says that, because I work out in the middle of nowhere. We cover 837 square miles with 2 ambulances. So, wow, it's a lot. But I enjoy it. It gives me time to hang out with my patients and, to learn about them and to, see my interventions work. And I like that.
All right. I'm going to tell you one of my favorite patients. And while I'm doing this, you think about one of your favorite patients, because if you get to spend time with them, I had a woman, this is years ago when I was a medic in Maine, coming from assisted living, and she had some, chest discomfort, kind of woman who had it but didn't want to tell you to bother you, right? Just one of those people, just really, really nice. So I got a line and a 12 lead and got her in the truck and had everything set, had about a half-hour drive down to York Hospital from Kennebunk, where I was. So I'm talking to her. And we're talking, and I said this, that. I said, so let me explain this to you. She goes, well, I know some of it because I was a nurse. I said, really? Where were you a nurse? She goes, well, in New York City. And this was a really nice assisted living facility, And so I was a nurse there. I said, except for when I was in the war. And I'm like, the war? And she said, yeah. She said, I was at the Manhattan Hospital, and I saw a sign on the board that if you go to the war, if you enlist, you can stay stateside for a year. And what the sign didn't say was that after that year, they shipped you overseas. And she went to North Africa and saw combat. Saw casualties as a nurse. And I said to her, okay, because if someone starts to share, I'm going to ask questions. I said, so you saw casualties and, combat? She goes, oh, yeah, no, we saw a lot. I said, what was the hardest part of that? Going from New York City to North Africa, what was the hardest part? And she looked at me, and then she looked around. There's only 2 of us. And she whispered, because she was so proper, she said, going to the bathroom in the desert. And that's what that generation was so amazing. And there's hardly anybody left from that generation anymore. But here's this proper woman who came back from the war and lived a life and now is in assisted living and still talks so proper about it, doesn't brag, doesn't talk about it. And I considered myself so lucky to have that conversation that I remember it to this day. I'm sure she's not with us anymore. I took great care of her, but I was honored just to be in the ambulance with her. Just to be able to do that and think about that in the 40s, leaving, New York City probably sounds like a pretty, in high income, right? And back then, women were teachers or nurses or homemakers. That's the way she looked at it. But I can think of a lot of bad trauma calls. I can think of people that maybe I saved, but that call was so important. I just thought bringing that up, if we look deeper into our patients, that's where the satisfaction comes from. It's like we're coming full circle here, Redbeard, and this and that, how do you find your satisfaction? I found it by just having such joy in talking to this woman who would soon not be there, and that entire generation wouldn't be there, but I got that half an hour with her.
Absolutely. There is so much value to that too, because I've always been one that, I've thought that we have to understand where we come from to know where we're going. Whether that is in EMS or even just history, like in life, you have to know where you've been to know where you're going. Um, and I think that there are people that don't take the time to value those conversations that they can have with, the older set. For example, there was a young lady. She actually just recently passed away. She was one of our frequent flyers, and every time we go over there, somebody would just be upset about having to go over there. Like she'd kink her oxygen tubing, and then she couldn't breathe, or she fell on the floor and she needed to go to the hospital. And that's okay. Um, this lady was a Vietnam nurse. She was a nurse in the Vietnam War. And she actually wrote a book. I believe it's has something. I don't remember the title. It has something to do with lipstick. But I sat back there on the way to another um, hospital that's a little bit further away, just listening to her talk about her time in Vietnam and how she felt about being a nurse and how she kind of lost her purpose whenever she got back stateside because like she was a nurse in a critical area and now it's just taking care of stub toes and whatnot and like I felt that like I feel that sometimes but there's so much value in people how people view the world can help you with your own view of the world. They can make it we always talk about embracing the suck but there are a lot of people that can make it suck a whole lot less. You just
I,
have to take the time to listen.
no, I listen. I agree, and there's a lot of meaning if you go to find it. I'm going to just go a couple things. There's someone taking the national registry soon, and is nervous because somebody else failed. And the national registry is here at this conference. I saw Bill, the director, already this morning, and don't freak out about. If you freak out, it's not going to work. I'm just going to take a quick shift here. The best advice I can give anybody taking the national registry, I imagine me talking about this, is answer every question to the best of your ability and move on. That's it, right? If you're thinking about questions that passed, your head's not in the game. Read the question. I read it twice. I took the paramedic registry again in January, and I read every question twice. And I then looked at the choices. And then just take the test. Go in there, keep your head clear, and take the test. I think that's the biggest thing. We could talk a lot about preparation and other things. I don't want to get deep into that, but go get that. Right now, we're at about a 66% pass rate for AEMT, relatively low, 73, 74 for EMT, and about 78 for paramedic. So between 2/3 and 3/4 of the people go in and get it the first time. So if you do have to go back, you go back. And no one gets 100 in the National Registry. They serve you harder questions until you get them wrong. So don't worry about it. And don't watch the clock. I watch the clock every 20 to 30 questions to make sure
Yes.
that 20 to 30 minutes went by, and that's it.
Yes.
So that was
Yes.
just a quick
I
reg.
always tell people don't look at the timer.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell them don't look at the timer and don't look at the question number. Like, I mean, like look at the question. Don't insert your own ideology into it. Look at what they're telling you. be able to pay attention to those cues that they give you. Like, for example, if they tell you that you are going to, one of the questions that I saw on the test prep apps and things like that I've been looking at was like, you're going to a chest pain call at 3:30 in the morning. Well, you should automatically be thinking acute coronary syndrome, because guess what? If they're calling at 3 o'clock in the morning, chances are they are having an emergency and you need to treat it as such. So that starts where you walk down that path, and then you just kind of go from there. They'll give you what you need to know. You just have to pay attention to it.
So exactly right. And you know what? People will say, oh, the National Registry is nothing like the street. It actually is, right? They may give you a question that's challenging, and maybe the patient has an altered mental status. Maybe it's a narrowed pulse pressure and a borderline tachycardia. But you've got to pick out the fact that the patient's headed towards shock or compensated shock, or maybe should get oxygen, even though their saturation might seem high enough because there's instability. And that's no different than the street. These signs don't always hit you over the head. You've got to be able to find them, right? Coming back to stuff we talked about earlier. So I think it's actually very much like the street, and that it's okay that just, go in and really read the question, take your time and do that. The multiple response questions take a little bit longer, and the ALS people, our AEMTs and paramedic candidates here, you know why they call people taking the National Registry candidates? They don't like to call them testes. So there's a little joke there. Yeah, testes. No, not good. So if you're a candidate for
There was a delay. I just caught the last part of that.
I was wondering where that was going.
I love it.
So yeah, just take your time. You do have enough time. The clinical judgment scenarios where you get 12 questions. My first 24 questions when I took paramedic were clinical judgment scenarios, and multiple response. They just take a little bit more time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I probably need to go take that test. I need to check that out. I haven't done that yet, but I've been thinking about it.
Research by taking it. And if anybody out there wants to let your registry lapse, or maybe you're an old timer, didn't have the registry, then you can take a refresher, 30 hours, and then sit for the test, get your national registry, right? And it's a great experience. If you're teaching, or maybe you just have people on your ambulance or students and they're all freaked out about it, go see what it's about. I will admit now something you may have figured already from listening to me, is I'm a total nerd about this stuff. I went in to take the registry and I was sitting there and I'm like, oh, that is such a cool question, or, oh, look, that's a tough question. Oh, look at the way they put those distractors in there. And I had to say, okay, I gotta take the test. Like, I wish I could write these down and share them, because these questions are good questions, and, we have people that have worked for the registry writing for us. Now we try and get those same level of questions that make you think. Some of our questions actually make people angry. They'll write and they'll say, my instructor or my book doesn't agree. And I write back and say, the National Registry doesn't care about your instructor or your book, right? I mean, I've got a book, but I know the National Registry goes by research and position papers and the Pre-Hospital Guidelines Consortium, So the National Registry is going to take part of the question from the airway chapter and part of the question from the trauma chapter. And that's how it's different from your class exams. And it's going to want you to make a decision, not remember something. And that's where class exams fail a lot, and why people go in and freak out like they've never had a test like that before. And that's what we try and do. We try and help people, give them that feeling first. They have good questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So Martin actually makes a very valid point, in my opinion. He says, personally, I think if you want to teach, research by tests so you stay up to date on testing. So to that point, I had a young lady in a live probably a week to 2 weeks ago talking about how her instructors couldn't prepare them for the National Registry test because they'd never had it. I was like, okay, so this is, I said, don't tell your instructors I'm telling you this, but you need to find different instructors. That's just my opinion, obviously. But if they're not preparing you for what you have to do, what good are they doing you? Like, they can teach you their way all day long. And then you're going to sit for the National Registry and you're going to vomit because you don't know. Like, they're not
They
teaching
should.
you
They
what you
should
need to
definitely
know.
take it. They should take it. I totally agree with you. I don't know if we can make it a requirement. I think we sometimes don't have enough instructors as it is, but I would encourage people to do it. And you know what? I'll bet there's people that resist it because they're afraid they won't pass.
Mhm.
Right? We've had Limmer education now for, I want to say 12 or 13 years, right? And we've been doing this for a long time. Have a lot of apps out, and love what we do. What we do. I kind of figured I would pass, but I was nervous going to the test center, right? I'm the exam, prep guy. If I went in there and failed, holy cow, that'd be embarrassing, wouldn't it? I mean, everybody when you walk in there has that feeling, right? Everybody has that feeling, and it's okay. You should, if you're an instructor and you haven't taken it or haven't taken it in a while, take it. Just go and do it as a research, right? If you've been turning in research stuff all this time, take the test and you do that. And if you have to go through a quick refresher to do it, then take the refresher. You'll learn from that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, I've been thinking about it, kicking it around for my next research. So it's kind of funny though, because generally what happens is like, so I've got my research done through like my next research, obviously. And when I restarted this time, I had all of my stuff done for the next research within just a couple of months because I'm constantly learning and I'm constantly doing things. And I'm actually doing some beta testing for, I don't know if you know, Charlie Swearingen. Um, he's a flight medic out of Mississippi. He is doing like a critical care type company. It's called MeduPros, and I'm doing some stuff for him on the side just to kind of give him some feedback. Um, so I get CEUs through that. It's pretty cool. It's actually a pretty cool working relationship that I have with this guy. So
Nice.
I'm excited about that. I like learning about the education side of things because I know that I'm not going to be able to do this job forever, and I want to be able to be a part of it still because I'm telling you, I'm going to be one of those guys where if I don't have something to do that it relates to what is in my wheelhouse, I'm just going to stagnate and I'm probably going to be in a nursing home. So, got to keep active in it. So, um,
No,
but
you
yeah,
do.
I,
Education's a good way to stay in the game. I'm still out there. I think it's nice to be out there. You have fodder for case studies, and you keep current. You're not the dusty old person that's teaching. Because some people teach because they can't. Some people, go. But I love to teach, but I love seeing patients. That's another place I'm a total nerd. My little city with the fire department, we first respond. And when I'm there, but it's like, okay, Limmer's here, and they know I want to do it. I love to do it. Give me a sick person, something to do. All right, I'm going to tell you a quick story. We've been going for a long time. Have you seen those echo stethoscopes? The ones that are like $500, they record to your phone. I was listening to a guy a couple of months ago. I was listening to his lungs, and they were so moist in the basses. I'm like, boy, I wish I could record this. Like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy this stethoscope so I can, of course, since that happened, I've never had any great sounds. But I get the stethoscope. I get it in the mail. I put it together. I look at it. So what's the first thing you do? You put it on yourself, right? So I put the earpiece in. I take it. I turn it on. I put the settings. And I put it up against my chest. And it says, murmur detected. AI says there's a murmur. I'm like, I had a physical 6 months ago. How can I have a murmur? So I'm like, all right, I'm not going to freak out about it. I mean, I'm active. I walk, I do stuff, and I don't have any problems. I'm like, but, so next time I go to the doctor, and I hated doing it. I don't want to be like one of those, I looked it up on Google, and I think I have this, right? So I go to the doctor, and they said, what's going on? I said, I think I got a heart murmur. And how do you know? I said, my stethoscope told me. I said, I bought the stethoscope that's got AI. He goes, I said, but I had a physical last year. I didn't have one. He goes, no, I listened. He puts a stethoscope on my chest and he listens and all the places, listen to all the valves. And he takes his stethoscope off and he looks at me and he says, what kind of stethoscope was that again? And I said, why? He goes, because you've got a heart murmur.
oh,
Turns out I've got a bicuspid aortic valve instead of a tricuspid aortic. I've had it my whole life. It's a congenital thing. And the stethoscope I bought found it.
Wow.
I mean, I'm fine. I have to get a scan I have to get an ultrasound every year just to watch it. But the stethoscope found it. AI in the stethoscope.
That's crazy, but at the same time, like it's of huge benefit,
Yeah, I mean,
especially when you're in the back of
you
the
know how much it
ambulance.
cost me? You know how much it cost me? That stethoscope, the ultrasound, then the CAT scan. That stethoscope cost me a lot more than $500.
This is true. This is true. Uh, Healthcare, gotta love it.
There was an Echo EKO stethoscope. It records to your phone, and it has AI, and it has an EKG built in because we first responded with the fire department and don't have a monitor. So I'm like, if I get the stethoscope, I can put it on the chest, look at the stethoscope itself and see the EKG, and then it'll record it to my phone so I can see it. So I mean, it's pretty cool. It's a little bit of money, but it was something I splurged for because really for the teaching, so I could do that.
I
Oh, we
also
got some
so
people that
Black
have
Doctor
them.
Phil down there says he has the core. I have the core as well, and I have it attached to a Littman Master Cardiology, which has been my go-to stethoscope for years. So
Oh yeah,
it's good. I would eventually like the Echo. Maybe I can get into a partnership with the Echo folks.
there you go. So, what would you tell? All right, let's go. I like the hopping around here. At some point, we're gonna have to stop. It's been going. We still have people here and stuff, but it gets a little bit long, I guess. What stethoscope do you recommend for an EMT or for a paramedic when they come to you and say, I got this stethoscope. It's not a really great one. I got, for class. What do you recommend? What do you tell people?
Generally, what I will tell them is, I've always liked the Littman Cardiology 3, Cardiology 4, but my go-to is the Master Cardiology just because it helps me to, because of the tunable diaphragm, it's all about the pressure that you put onto the
Very much.
diaphragm of the chest. And if you, adjust your earpieces because you're having a difficult time hearing, but you understand how to use that tunable diaphragm, that's a game changer. So I think that if you are going to invest in your career, then yes, it's a little bit expensive starting out, but it's going to you know it's going to help you in the long run. And so I've always said, just spend the money if you can. Um, like if you got a rich uncle or something, maybe talk to them. But yeah, I've always been a Littman guy, so I think that I'm going to have to eventually invest in the Echo just because, like, I'm getting older and it's harder to hear. But
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. I've got a cardiology 4. That's what I had, and I still sometimes will grab that if I'm headed out the door. If there's sometimes when you respond in your own city, sometimes you hear it and you're close. So that's the one sometimes I'll grab to go. But I've also got a Littman Master Classic, and that one I have to tell you, cardiology 4 I love. I mean, you can hear there's definite quality in these stethoscopes. The Littman Cardiology 4, Master Cardiology, but I got to tell you, the Master Classic. If you're not really going for heart sounds and doing that, you just want lungs, and you don't want your $200 stethoscope to get stolen or run over by the truck. A $99 Master Classic stethoscope for starting, if you don't want to drop the big bucks, actually has a fair amount of quality. I really like
that's
it.
good. I
That's
have
that's
never.
that's the one in my briefcase now for in-flight medical emergencies and other stuff I throw in. I have a little kit that I throw in my backpack, and they're all right. I don't want to tell a whole bunch of stories, but I was sitting in the plane, and they say anybody with medical training, so I always do it. So I get up and I go back, and here's this kid. He's out, sitting in his seat, and this kid's out. Guy comes up and he says, I'm an EMT. He goes, well, I used to be an EMT. I'm like, okay, let's work on it. And so we get him out. I said, let's get him out of the chair. He's unresponsive. Let's get him on the floor. So we're in row 27. This kid's laying in the aisle, and the flight attendant opens up the med bag from the plane and hands this guy the stethoscope, and he puts it around his neck. I'm like, well, that doesn't do anything for us. I'm doing a primary assessment, and this guy's got the stethoscope around his neck. So I'm like, oh. So it's a young person, right? You think, here, let's bring this into critical thinking. I say, here's a 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old kid. So you don't think stroke or heart attack, you think overdose and seizures and, stuff like that. So without the stethoscope, I could have said, give me the stethoscope, but I'm an old timer. I took my hands, put them around his ribs, put my thumbs up by his xiphoid process, and I felt his chest expanding deeply and at a good rate. So I instantly ruled out the opioid overdose. But since then, I now carry a stethoscope because I have my own now, and it's the Master Classic. So then I looked and I said, he had some blood around his mouth. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's a seizure, So the flight attendant taps me on the shoulder and says, listen, we got to land this plane in 5 minutes. We can't have you guys in the aisle. So me and this other guy pick up the kid, carry him up to the galley, lay him down in the galley. When the plane landed, I was sitting in the galley with my feet against the lav door. I sent the other guy back to his seat, and the kid started to wake up. When you do a medical emergency on a plane, I bet people here have done some medical emergencies on planes, people that are watching. The medics that come on the plane are going to do one of two things. It's rarely in between. One is they're going to totally ignore you, or two, they're going to treat you like your medical control. It's for some reason, it's never any in between. So I gave him a good report, and they said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I think he's okay. We can probably put him in a chair now. Let's get him off the plane. So we got him off the plane, and I'm getting my butt off the floor of the galley, and the flight attendants, everybody stay put for a little bit. All of a sudden, this woman comes running up the aisle. Was that Stevie? Was that Stevie? And I'm like, does Stevie have a seizure history? She goes, oh my God, he had a seizure, and I slept through it. His mother was sitting next to him while this kid had a seizure in his seat and slept through the whole thing. I was able to figure out it was a seizure by the blood and by the postictal coming back around. Nobody saw the seizure, but she slept through the kid's seizure.
Oh no.
So they're fun. They're fun.
Oh yeah.
There's some good people here.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm in Texas more than Kennebunk these days, down in the Galveston, Texas area, and but I spent a lot of time in Kennebunk, and was a medic there for a long time.
I
don't know. We winding down now, Redbeard. We've been going for a long time. What do you think?
Yeah. I would love to do this again, though, as you have time. This is fantastic.
Well, and we'll host. And what happened before is that we have the account. It's got a lock on both adding members and hosts. And we're researching it now as we speak. We'll figure it out. So I want to thank you for hosting so we could do this. And something tells me that you and I would be able to chat for some time, regardless of the platform or in person. Or maybe we'll even run into each other at a conference sometime. It'd be fun.
Oh, absolutely. I am definitely going to try to get out to a lot more conferences within the next year or so. It's one of those things and I might shoot you an email here in a little bit and try to pick your brain about, how to get my foot in the door for that sort of thing, because I'm still relatively new at this, and I do think that I've got some ideas that I, could have something to offer, to these conferences in these areas that, maybe don't know who Redbeard the Medic is. I'm literally just some dude from rural Missouri that got on TikTok and, somewhere along the way, somebody liked what I did. But you
have a message. Yeah, you have a message. You have passion. And that's what does it. Like speaking at conferences, right? Speak on what you're passionate about, because that will always go well and people will feel that. EMS people, they may say they're stoic and grumpy or whatever, but they also feel when they connect, they get it. And that's really, really important. And the way to do it, Redbeard, is to start with a local conference or a state conference. And then what happens is you're going to go do something and you're going to be passionate about it. And people are going to say, hey, will you come to my conference? And then and that's how it all starts. You've got to be in it to win it kind of thing. Go to your first one, do stuff you're passionate about. And then at the end, hang out for a little bit, People come up to you. That's a really good sign. They want to talk to you, to do stuff. Somebody's going to say, hey, I really like that. Would you come and do our conference? I coordinate this conference. And that's how it starts. Trust me, that's how it starts. Start small, and then you go big.
I actually had a gentleman yesterday who is on the board of directors for a conference that they do in Minneapolis, Minnesota in January. I don't know if I want to freeze my ass off in January in Minneapolis, but he was like, you should put in for this. You should put in and, put your stuff in and see if they would want you to come present that. I was like, I mean, I could try. So I'll see what they say. I mean, it's worth a shot, so I'll put that in.
EMS conferences are never in season. If you're at a ski resort, it's the summer. If you're at the beach, it's the winter. Why? Because the room rates are cheap.
Oh yeah,
And because
absolutely.
you're never going to be in Minnesota, out fishing in a lake in July, because that's when they want big money coming to. But I mean, I've been to Myrtle Beach. Their conference is in March and April in South Carolina, and in West Virginia was a ski lodge in September. I mean, everything is off season for EMS. The physicians groups go to Florida in the winter. EMS, yeah, not so much, because it's more economical to do that. But start at one conference, and then it radiates out from there. That's really the way to do it.
Good to know. I will definitely do that. There is a conference that I'm actually most likely speaking at around here. It's one that I've been to many times. It's called the Guardians Conference. Bob Page used to be the big headliner for that whenever it first started. I must have taken his multi-lead medics class like 17 times over the course of a few
He's
years.
quite a speaker. He's been doing it quite a speaker. He's been doing it for a long time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
He has. No, but that's how you get out. That's how it starts. And then, then you go. The other thing I'll tell you is that once you start going and flying places, pick one airline and try and stick to it and get status. It makes your travels a lot better.
Good to know. I'm taking notes, by the way.
No, I am. I fly Delta pretty much exclusively, and you get a little bit of the medallion status, and you do that every once in a while. You'll be lucky enough to get an upgrade and doing that. So I'm going to jump in here a little bit. A couple comments about the AEMT question, AEMT exam. The AEMT exam's got a relatively bad pass rate, about 66% right now. Starting last July 1, they added new type exams, clinical judgment scenarios, and the TEIs, drag and drop, things you put in order, click the boxes. I'm going to say a couple things about it. First is that people don't understand the depth of AEMT, and I say that for instructors. So a lot of times you're not taught in the depth that you probably should have been, and you may not have had an EMT class that prepared you as an EMT, and that affects your AEMT. So let's take the training part, put it aside. Then the National Registry, it's still a 135 question exam. It's long. No matter what you're going to do, 135 questions, only 100 count, 35 are pilot items. But to make that exam, the National Registry took challenging EMT questions, pulled them into the AEMT test. So you're probably getting more challenging EMT questions than you had on your National Registry EMT. And that's another one of the problems. I personally think that the clinical judgment scenarios where you'll get 12 or so questions are more like the way we think. Most people say that the new questions are better than getting 12 random, bizarre, challenging National Registry questions, because it's the way we learned in class. It's the way we practiced in lab. It's the way we think. It kind of goes in order. So I would say, first of all, don't freak out about the new questions, and don't freak out about the technology. If you're watching this on TikTok, you know how to swipe and click and do stuff, right? So that's not the issue. Now, the fact that they want you to make a diagnosis and a treatment decision, okay, that can get a little bit deeper. And even the multiple response questions are more. AEMT is tough for a number of reasons, but it's not insurmountable to do that. Relatively low pass rate. And I think those are the reasons why I would say, our apps have all those new questions in them, and we're constantly adding more, all the new question types. But I would say, go in and take good apps. And I'm not too bashful to say ours are going to challenge you. They're good. And, go in and take those and get used to those. Don't be intimidated by them. And if you haven't learned a lot of pathophysiology, I think that's the key to passing. I really do, because you're going to know why. When you go through the question and you read the whole thing, how do you know that the fact that the skin is cool and moist is bad, and what does it mean? It's ultimately pathophysiology, right? I'm going to put a plug in here, but this is for a free product. We have Limmer Education as a thing called 7 Things EMS. It's a podcast that I do, and I break it down into 7 points. All my guests do 7 points. And in doing that, it helps our attention span. We have a 2-part episode on pathophysiology-based assessment, and it's free. So if somebody's looking for something where you want to just say, I'm not getting it, my AEMT, I took it, I didn't succeed or whatever, listen, I got a lot of stuff I'll sell you, but I got a lot of free stuff too. And that pathophysiology-based assessment podcast is going to make you go, holy cow, I never thought about things like that. And I think that's important. I don't want to ramble on too much about that, but there's a free thing that you can do. If you go to limmereducation.com, you can get to it that way, or just Google search 7 Things EMS pathophysiology-based assessment. It'll bring you right to the RSS feed or our website.
That's awesome. That's what. So one of the people that follow me consistently, and there's a bunch of them that are in here right now. Usually, so people ask me all the time, like, what do I need to focus on? Like, I'm getting ready to start the EMT class. I'm getting ready to start paramedic class. Where do I start? What do I need to start studying now? And there are 2 things that I always tell them, and it's anatomy and physiology and pathophysiology. Without those 2 things, your assessment really doesn't mean much, because you can't use the data that the patient is providing you, be that, skin condition, be that mental status, or how they're talking to you. You can't use that data for anything other than to say, okay, well, this is going on. Now I have no idea what to do for this. And so it's pretty cool that, you mentioned pathophysiology, because that's literally what I tell everybody. Like, you really need to know the why as well as the what, because if you don't, you end up being one of those protocol monkeys, like we said earlier. The more you know about pathophysiology, the more you know about disease processes, the better you're going to understand why you're doing the things that you're doing. Yep. So I love that.
Yeah, we actually just launched EMT Class Ready for people that are going into EMT school. You can actually take a pre-class that will teach the anatomy and physiology, medical terminology. I do a little bit of pathophysiology, how to study. So many people are anxious about going into EMT class. I'd watch the Facebook EMT paramedic study groups. I'm starting class. What should I do? What should I do? It's like, you know what? Let's help get people ready. Let's tell them what to expect, how to take tests, how to study and do that. And that's been going really well, to be able to do that. And I didn't know whether I should put pathophysiology in there, but I ended up doing some patho and some A&P, some med term, because that'll give people a foundation. They won't be going in cold. And EMT is entry level, right? There's no requirement to have any experience. And then all of a sudden, Thursday night, we're going to teach you everything you need to know about the human body. And that's crazy. Totally crazy.
Oh, yeah. I always also advise people, and so for you guys that are just starting out, go get an anatomy and physiology book that is not designed for EMTs and paramedics. There is some benefit to one that is designed for us. However, there is more benefit, in my opinion, if you have the broader picture, right? Because if you have the broad picture, then you can kind of narrow it down.
And you know what? Have it for reference. Like I said, I'm a nerd. I love books, and, have Harrison's Internal Medicine and Tintinelli. I have emergency medicine texts. I have different EMS texts, and I like to have them to look at. I just think it's good to do. Keep it on your shelf. You get a call where you don't understand something, you always have something to go back to,
Yes, absolutely.
Ethan just joined, and we're going to finish. We've been going for quite a while, and I'm glad I didn't cut out again. I'm glad we got on a roll here. That's good.
Yeah, this has been a great conversation, especially for me. Like I said, I'm totally fanboying over here. I'm just doing a really good job of controlling it. Um, I looked up to you for years. I
Oh,
can't
I'm a
express
goober,
enough.
man. I'm just a goober.
And it's so cool because, like, before I started on TikTok, I was never going to be able to have these conversations with like you or with like Jimmy Apple, the EMS Avenger. And I've
Oh,
had
he's cool.
conversations
He
with
is
him.
cool. Yeah.
Yes, he is.
He's a
Uh,
great voice. He's that science voice, that thinking voice, that's not afraid to put it out there voice, or to and take some of these sacred but wrong beliefs we have and call them out.
Absolutely. And, he's good about that and holding people accountable for those things. And, we as paramedics, we don't like to be held accountable. We don't like to admit that we're wrong because, we're never wrong in our own mind. It takes a level of humility, I believe, to be able to admit that you were wrong. Like I'm writing a book currently about like, it's kind of like a memoir up to this point, and one of the chapters in it is literally called "The Lady I Helped Kill," and it was because I didn't know something, or it's because I knew it and I didn't do it, um, and I assisted in a negative outcome, and I admit that, and I'm pretty open and honest about that. Um,
That's the way we
I
keep from doing it again. We have to do that.
absolutely, I
Everybody's
carry
got a story.
horrific.
Some keep them very close to the vest, others will share them. But there's not, just so you know, anybody listening now or listening to this in the future, everybody's got a story about a bad outcome. Everybody does. You're practicing medicine, you're practicing EMS. It's not a perfect thing. And we don't want to have errors, but we are going to.
Mhm.
You want to do
Very
my
true.
Seven Things podcast? We'll talk about mentoring or something. We'll do that Seven Things EMS. You and I'll do that. I'll drop you a note about that. We can get on and do that podcast and have maybe a similar discussion, but we'll have seven things how to help somebody new in EMS, or seven things you need to know about mentoring new EMS providers.
Yes, I would
Let's do it.
absolutely love that.
All
Yeah,
right, let's do
I'm
it.
all for it.
Let's do it.
I'm
Somebody
all
here
for
said
it.
we should do a podcast together. Made me say, I've got an idea.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I'm all for it. I am all for anything that I can do to, to have these conversations because this is where we really improve. And the more people that hear the message, the better off we're all going to be as a profession and as humans. It's not even just as a profession, it's as humans. This is like how we treat the human condition.
Uh,
So,
Stephanie says yes to seven things. I saw that, just so you know, Stephanie.
I love
All
that.
right, let's call this. It's been a long time. People never get to the end of this on YouTube, but I'm glad you recorded it and are going to post it. I mean, I had a time really, right back that time really flew.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. It's so enjoyable. And, I really appreciate you taking the time to reach out and, taking the time to do this. This has been fantastic. Um,
We've got more. We have more in
I,
us. We'll do it again.
yeah, yeah, I'm all for that. I am all for that. It's been good. It's been profitable.
Yeah, no, it's good for both of us and people. Great responses here. I feel the same way. It was really great. So let's really end it because I think I tried it twice already, and I'm a talker and you're a talker. So
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
so let's do that. But let's do another one, and then I'll get back to you about when we do that seven things. I think we'd have a lot of fun with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just want to take a moment to thank everybody that's watched. You
Absolutely.
guys are really why, you're why we continue to do this. And, especially as, for me with the social media thing, I didn't want to do social media. I didn't want to do TikTok, none of this. And now y'all have wrote me in, and so I'm stuck. I'm institutionalized at this point. Um, so just thanks everybody for your support. Seriously, neither one of us could do this without you. So
You've got a great, and you have a great message, and that's what drew me into it. And don't stop that. We need good, positive voices out there. Someone that's themselves, someone that really is themselves, and does that, because a lot of times it's not. And I think real is good. I think people see real, and that's what I saw in your stuff. And We'll do it again. And I thank you for the opportunity for doing this and for your kind words.
Absolutely. I try to send people to you all the time. So hopefully, you're getting more people invested in your product. I tell people about you all the time. I'm actually probably going to add your link to the link tree in my bio so that people can come over there and check that stuff out. So thanks again. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy your time at the conference. And yeah, we'll definitely get together and do the 7 things. I would love to do that.
And we'll come back and do this again too. I had a good time.
Yeah, likewise.
Be safe out there, everybody. Be safe.
Take care.
Be good to yourself.
Yes. Remember, it's okay not to be okay as well.
Good finish.